So now I'm really happy that we have a third keynote by Pascale Weber. This is now a change of perspective. We now bring in the view of a canton, of the cantonal administration. And Pascale Weber is working for the Forest Service of the Canton Zurich. And she studied environmental systems at ETH Zurich. And she has a PhD in dendroecology, worked on climate change impacts, on forest ecosystems. And she worked for quite a while at ETH WSL. So she was also, I was using actually an index that you developed. And after 15 years of science, she decided to change and started another second career in the Cantonal Forest Service in Zurich. And there she's responsible for conservation in the forests of the canton, and she already works now there since 12 years, which I was surprised to hear, but time is running. So I'm very happy that you will give us an insight in concept and measures in promoting forest biodiversity in the canton of Zurich.
Welcome to everyone. Is it fine? Okay. So I'm very glad to, or it's good to be here and to share with you my practical experience. Thank you very much, Andy, for inviting me, and Frank for inviting me to give this keynote here. And I'm sure it will be a change in perspective now, what is coming. Yes. An overview over the forests in the canton of Zurich. So we have the total area in the canton is 1,730 square kilometers, and the forested area thereof is 50,000 hectares, so it's about 1/3 of the total area. And then we have the area with biodiversity goals of any kind. I will show you later in more detail. This is about 1/4 of the forest area. And the strictly protected area, this is at the moment about 10% of the forest area. But I will later also come to the concept of the ecological infrastructure, and here we talk about 17% that we already have as core areas, core habitats. So we are very fine on the way in promoting biodiversity in the canton, in the forest. And this is more a bit of a touristic view from the lagoon. So some of you might have flown in to Zurich. So this is the view you get from the lagoon hillside. You can also see the flax tower from the Swiss Flaxnet there. And it's a very nice place to do a walk along the ridge. And there you have open canopy forest, and a bit further down you have the lagoon forest natural reserve. So now some points about the strategic background in the canton of Zurich. There's a lot of strategy, of course, in the authorities. And so it started 1995 with this kind of old but still quite actual concept of nature conservation. So this is the concept covering the whole canton. And already there were target areas, or area targets for open canopy forests of 1,000 hectares, natural forest reserves of 1,700 hectares, and later came the wide ecozones between closed forest and open landscape of, one said, we say like 50 hectares we want to have today, actually in 2025 was the kind of the time scale. And these wide ecozones that are 100 meters, like 50 meters in front of the border, of the edge of the forest edge and 50 meters into the forest. And it's just like very continuous changing from open to dense forest. Then, based on this concept, there was an inventory taken of the forest stands of natural interests. And this is just an inventory that is binding to the authorities, so not to the owners. But so far, about 1/4, or maybe now even more, is already protected area also. And then in 2010, it was the Forest Development Plan. So this is now from the Forestry Division, the instrument. And there it said that the objectives and measures for the inventory objects need to be defined in cooperation with the Division of Nature Conservation and the forest owners. And then, of course, also, like the BAFO is also here, another very important instrument for us is the Guideline for the Forest Biodiversity of the Federal Office of the Environment. That is kind of also give us a concept of different habitat types that we promote. And now we are in preparation for the new Forest Development Plan and also for this plan of for the ecological infrastructure. To give you an overview about the involved people or the stakeholders, these are all at different levels. So this is where I am. And actually, I used to work for 10 years in the Nature Conservation Division, and after that changed to the Forest Division, and we have a very close cooperation at this interface, and it's very important. It's also a lot of communication, because we use different languages, and also, like the Nature Conservation Division has more a top-down approach, which means planning the public interest in space. And the Forest Division, the strength is that we are close to the forest owners, to the foresters, and here we belong more a bottom-up approach, like we need to convince the people, and then they are motivated to do biodiversity by themselves. So it's kind of the two strategies that meet there, which I think are really important, and also this brings segregation and integration into the world, because it's two different approaches that meet. Yeah, and then the other levels, the community level, of course, very important, the communal foresters. The communities are also forest owners. And then we have the private forest owners. This is kind of there together. So it's in the Canton of Forest is 50% privately owned and non-privately owned. Then we have non-governmental organizations. And we work a lot together with contractors. They do habitat creation for us, or they do just tree harvesting. So there's a whole economy. I thought I tell this here after the talk of Vanessa Gries. The foresters are really interested in this work because a lot of the work is summer work. So this is exactly what you told, Verena. They can employ more people because they have more work in the summer. So they don't just have this peak in the winter time, but they also have work in the summer. And for them, it's really interesting. It's a whole new economy, this biodiversity economy, if you so want. For communication, I invented this, and I use this now always for, this is what we do in space. So we work that this system, this overall system, is at different diverse levels, but also scales. It can start here. It's the whole forest where we do close to nature management. Then we have habitats. We have target habitats. These are habitats that you cannot just have everywhere. For example, open canopy forest, you need to have the site that is suitable for this. But also the additional habitats, they're extremely important to interconnect the other habitats. And I will later on a bit more explain in more detail what these habitats are that I'm speaking of. And then the most upper triangle, it's the species level. And here it's really the very specific demands, requirements they have, the ecological requirements. So it's from here to up here. It's a gradient in specificity. What they need, also like the site dependency is increasing. And this is really important in what we do then in reality, because you cannot have everything everywhere. And you have to start where you still have the species and where you have still the pools of species and can promote and go on from there. And here, now to speak of the concept of the ecological infrastructure. So these are the priority areas, the areas where these very rare and endangered species are still abundant. And the target habitats, these are the core habitat areas. And then we have the network, additional habitats that interconnect these habitats. And the whole forest, here we talk about the matrix. I think Jürgen also talked about the matrix. And this needs to be permeable. So, for example, habitat trees make the forest permeable for xylobionts. So they can move between the target habitats and the additional habitats. Now I start at the bottom level. So this is German. You don't need to read, I will just tell everything in English. But this is how we hand it out. It's a checklist to the foresters for close to nature management. And the idea is they take this checklist when they go out and marking out trees for harvest, and they just look at these questions and think about them, and the idea is to use opportunities when they work with this checklist. So the first question is, did I always have the wrong? Okay. So the first question is, are the tree species sustainable under climate change? Then the second, do we have a tree species diversity, and do we also have pioneers who are, for example, important for certain butterflies, Apatura ilia and Salix alba, for example, some of you might know. So it's just the idea that we use the opportunity. If you have pioneers, we also promote and keep them a bit longer. Then can we promote habitat trees? How does it look with deadwood? Then is also soil protection is an aspect. Very important invasive species, especially in open canopy forests. We do a lot, probably 1/3 of the money goes into invasive species, but these are not only not only foreign species, but especially like brambles and clematis and plants like this. We need to reduce. And then also, is there a potential for ecological upgrading? Can we build structures, corridors along paths and roads? Or can we make wet patches? Things like this. So this is a very low-level approach. And now this is how it looks in the real. So this is just our GIS browser, and you see one area at the Zurich in the Canton, and you can see this is a strictly protected area. Here we have open canopy forests. Then we have from the open landscape, strictly protected areas, there's landscape protection. Then here we have promotion of oak forests. This is protection forest. So it's all interwoven. And these are the data we are using when we are going into space. And even more important, no one talks much about this often in the forestry sciences, but it's extremely important. This is what we have to work with, is really the species abundance. And you have some small triangles, like here, these are the most priority plants and animals of this area. So now I would like to introduce you to the habitats that I've been talking about before in the pyramid. And now we start at the target habitats. So the first is open canopy forests. We had this goal of 1,000 hectares. So we have nearly reached this with 930 hectares at the end of last year. And we have now in the new forest development plan, we have new goals, but these are still in consultation. So this is a bit vague. Here it says 1,600, but I'm not sure whether this will really be the target. And then we have, for open canopy forests, we have implemented the plan of action about 20 years ago now. So we are always using this plan of action. And using means we do the following measures. We do thinning, shrub clearing, mowing also. This is about 230 hectares at the moment each year. And we have some pilot projects with grazing. And the costs are 2.5 million annually. So this is what I said, it's really an economy. But also we can really promote the habitats and species and keep them, preserve them. And here we also have reporting with we report the target species according to the plan of action, and we report the area per measure per year. And of course, they look very much different. So if you go to the more montane area, they look a bit different. They have different target species than if you go to the lower, to the colline area. And I've just brought 2 pictures, but yeah, they are much more diverse than that. So the next are the forest natural reserves. Here we had this target of 1,700 hectares, and now we have reached 2,296 so far. And this is really not an easy target because we are in a very strongly human-influenced, impacted part of the, like being low level or in the colline and submontane area. The humans have always had a very strong impact on these forests. But there was this visionary idea of Andreas Speyer, who installed this Silwald Forest Natural Reserve. It's 800 hectares, so it's a big part of what we have. And this is really at the doorstep of Zurich, so it's also good for building for how do you say, for showing the people. Genau. And here we don't need so much money, so it's 100,000 per year. And we also do not monitoring by ourselves, so it's mostly done by the Federal Office of the Environment. Then we have wet and humid forests, so that these are alluvial forests, floodplains and bogs. Here we have these hectares, this number of hectares in the habitats of the national importance. There was no goal before in the strategies, and now we have a goal that is actually just the forest associations that are wet. So these will be target habitats, but also network, and also the measures are thereof not the same. So maybe in the target habitats we need to do re-wetting because they are often drained. Then of course there is logging, and the idea is to transform them into the natural stage. And if the beaver is there, yeah, that's fine. We let him do his job. Yeah, so the cost can be very small to very large. If we do like these hydrological measures, it can be 200,000 francs per hectare, for example. And again, the monitoring is mostly based on the monitoring by the Federal Office of the Environment. But of course, we will have a monitoring when we have our new plan of action that is in preparation. This will be in analogy to the plan of action for the dry and open canopy forests. Then I come to the oak forests. Now again, we have oak forests in the priority areas, in the target areas, the protected areas, but a lot outside. So here we have many hectares, more than 4,000. And measures are done on 250 hectares annually. We have a, so to say, oak concept and a management directive. So, for example, you need to have, I think, 25% of oak on a plot so you can get money. So there are always certain criteria in these management directives. And of course, measures are management of the existing oak stands, establishing new stands, copying with standards, not on much of the area, but this picture shows one in the Niederholz. And actually, this is done by retired people who like to work in the forest, and they do this copying and make firewood bundles. And the forester says, for me, it's not interesting. This is too small to take it out. You need to pay me. And yeah, that's the situation we have. And for oak forests, it costs us 700,000 Swiss francs annually. Then this is a speciality in the Canton of Forest. We have an actual area of 1,300 hectares of yew forests. And also here we have a management directive, because these gene reserves in the Canton of Zurich, they are also of European interest. And as you can see, we have a problem because red deer got more abundant, and now they are rubbing and peeling off the bark, and we need to do browsing protection here. Yeah. And this is not so expensive. And then finally I come to the forest edges. These also, of course, we have in the protected areas, but I think as a habitat it's a lot more important as interconnecting habitats between the target areas. And this is actually 2,000 kilometers. So we took 10 meters of depth of forest edge depth, but this should be more in the future because 10 meters is not so much for biodiversity. So we will have different types of forest edges. And here we pay 500,000 Swiss francs annually. So this was the overview over the habitats. And now I would like to show you because we needed to have these objectives and measures for the inventory of forest stands of natural interest. So what we did was that we took together all the actual target habitats. So this is, for example, here the open canopy forest in orange, or the forest natural reserves in purple, and the green is the oak forest. And then we modeled open canopy forest potential, and we modeled using light detection and ranging data, the old growth forest, like stands with a lot of old trees. So this is, of course, just was ist ein Hinweis? A hint, exactly. So we took different tree height classes and looked how much kind of mass is at the plot, and that's how we came to these pink cells. And now you could go out and see whether this is really plausible, that we have old wood here that we could make like a small reserve or just use as a old wood stand. Genau. So this is some planning that we use now when we go further planning in more detail, and we really come to the actual sites. Here you can see a map from Glattfelden, and we invented this. It's like a planning of the target habitats. Here you have again the light forest, the oak forest. This is just close to nature management. Then we have this old growth, yeah, and forest edges. And this we do only for the protected area so far. And then the second step is that we plan the measures. And this is, for example, also for people who do an operational planning, an operational plan. They can now use these measures. So we have the normal measures that are in the tree layer. They are normally used by the foresters. And we amended measures in the shrub and the herb layer. And for example, here you have the stars. These are species-specific measures. So this could be that you need to do litter raking, or you need to build a structure, things like that. Now I come to the last triangle. That's the species triangle, and I will move on a bit fast here. Genau. But you can see that here we have fauna species with a plan of action. So these only species have a plan of action who are rare and endangered, and where the Canton of Zurich has a high responsibility for it, and where measures are urgent and feasible. So you can see that in the forest only, these are really bound to the forest. We have, for example, this fringe-horned mason bee who breeds on pollen of Pulmonaria officinalis, or this mollusk. Genau. Then these are partly in the forest, but they can also be outside, and especially like bats, like the grey long-eared bat, who has the nursery roots in buildings, in the city, in the towns, and forages along the hedges and in the forest. And now this is also clear that the ecological infrastructure does not just end at the forest border, but it's the whole landscape that needs to be interconnected. And the same, of course, we have for flora species, and you can see here in the forest only, many of the species are yellow, so that means they are target species in the open canopy forest. So if we don't do these measures in the open canopy forest, these species who are really specific to this measurement, to this management, they will at some point get lost. And this is again the ones that are partly in the forest, so here we have only open canopy species. So the knowledge of these species and plans of action is okay, it's fine to have. Often we have experts who go to the forest and they look after these plants, but we wanted to have more, so we now are introducing online manuals for practitioners. So these are some basic conservation manuals, but also fact sheets for species with special conservation measures. And you can see a bit of an example, but it will really be an online tool, and we will introduce this in next year to the foresters. And this will be not over the whole canton, because not all species are everywhere. So we really will do this in each forest sector in the canton. Good. This is from a publication I had last year. And just to show that usually we think about how forest associations change under climate change. And we need to know how plant communities, how animal communities, how species communities change under climate change. And it's not just climate and the sites are changed that change, but also the management. And if we do the right management, it may help to preserve the species, because it's always this combination. So they are here because of the historical forest use. We have today's actual species abundance. And if we do adaptive management, we may gain new winners that will be there and hopefully preserve or take with the ones that are from former management, impacted by former management. And if we don't do anything, we may lose those species that are really, like, for example, if the conditions of a species in an open canopy, there will be too warm, so it needs to go higher up. And if we don't do the thinning higher up, it will not be able to establish there. I come to my conclusion. So from a practical point of view, for me it's very important, it's one of my credo, that we should use the instruments the foresters know. So that's why we invented this planning. And then evidence-based planning is very important. That's why we really need research. But also is the motivation of the involved people very important. And here we also need economic stimulus. So it will not work out without. But of course also we need to convince the people of forest biodiversity values. Therefore, the knowledge about habitats and species is crucial, not also for us and for the people in research, but especially for the practitioners. And when we communicate about the goals, then we often want more. But it's really important to tell what we have achieved and to estimate and to value what has been achieved before going further. And it's a whole system, not just on the side of the biodiversity, but also of the involved people. So thank you for your attendance. And
I repeat it, very impressive. Probably heard it. Any questions to Pascale?
Thank you for a real-life example. You told about that you have to convince people to enjoy biodiversity in their forest by subsidizing with a lot of economically. Is it a paid way to bankruptcy in the future? Because if you increase the area, the prices will go up and up and up, and finally you reach like in Estonia. We pay a lot, we have 30% under protection, and we pay to owners only as little. They can't sue into the court. Otherwise, they don't get enough. And maybe you still have good ideas, as you said, practicing stories, that to find how to cut the tree to preserve the forest ecosystem. Which way you would go?
It's a really good question. I think we really have to find new systems of management that are economically feasible and still economically interesting. And I don't have an easy answer. With us, at the moment, we are kind of introducing a new system of economic stimulus, and this means that the opportunity cost should be covered. And this means really it's a lot of money, because it's like the forester says, I could do much more, I could do taking out as much logs I can, and this will yield me so much. So if I do open canopy forest, it never grows as far and so on, so it's a big difference, so you have to pay for that. And with open canopy forest, it's not so bad because it's mostly deficit if you go there. But if you are on more productive sites, it will be very costly. So Yeah, I think we need more new systems where it is still important, and where we can have this combination, for example, of summer work and winter work, and like other aspects that might be interesting for the contractors. I mean, we have contractors that only do this work. They have specialized on biodiversity work. And so it's also interesting. And why should the public not say, for us, it has a value, we pay? But I think then the whole society needs to say this has a value. In the end, it's politics.
Thanks. Here's another question.
Thank you. Philippe Wollhauser, Canton de Fribourg. I was very impressed by the amount reserved for the open canopy forest. It's 2.5 million. Where has all this money come from?
We have a fund für Natur- und Heimatschutzfonds, so it's like a fund that is sourced by the parliament, by the Canton Parliament, and because we had this initiative for nature conservation in the Canton of Zurich, there is more money coming into this fund, and so we can use more for example, open canopy forests, but then of course also the BAFU, it's about, I think, probably 500,000 per year. I'm not so sure. 1/4 maybe. Do you have the numbers in? No, yeah, but it's also a part that comes from the national finance, NFR.
Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I would be interested if you are in dialogue also with other cantons in Switzerland, so you share best practice examples or you learn from each other. I imagine the system is very different from canton to canton, but I would be interested in how this works on the communication side.
Mm-hmm. There's a Arbeitsgruppe, a group that meets once a year usually from the Schweizer Forstverein, the
Swiss Forestry Association.
Thank you, Frank. And so, yes, we are in connection and we share knowledge and sources also.
And excursions. So people are moved around to see what others do. And if I may say something, because I'm part of this group, this is a very preventive investment because people meet and discuss on sites. And I think this prevents many misunderstandings, things like that. It's a very good example. One more question? Yep.
Yeah, Trippleton from the FOEN from BAFU. So thank you very much for the very interesting talk. A question about slide 14. You showed the different the different maps basically, and I was wondering. So it's basically an indication based on LiDAR, and as far as I know, my recognition was that it's too early to actually do these kind of predictions based on LiDAR, but you already have them and you already apparently use them. So what's your experience from using LiDAR to create these priorities?
We did this with Lucas Mattis in 2016, and we kind of invented these indices, or maybe some were there and we used them, but we also did one for Coppicing forest where you have different, like the middle line and then some, like we invented some indices, and they are quite plausible. So if you go then out, and I often ask people, is it that it's good for there, that you have the old wood there? And often it's the case. So it's a hint. It's not that you can use this just from top down, but if you combine with the knowledge of the foresters, it's quite a good way to approach. But then, we had, for example, at one part, the northern exposition of a hillside, there were all these pink cells. So I thought, okay, perfect for forest reserve, but then you have had all private owners like this. So then it's more the realization that is difficult, because you need to persuade them that they will go into a forest natural reserve, and that's probably not what they want.
Okay, but very encouraging still. Thank you.
Okay, since Miro took a big effort to come here, a very last question.
Thank you, Frank. Pascal, very simple question. So you are already with southern Switzerland in the going to the Mediterranean zone. So what about restoration fires to maintain open habitat? Is it something that you are discussing in your canton, or is Switzerland experimenting with such an approach? Because the restoration fire would be much cheaper than the traditional way of keeping the open habitat. Is it a topic here or not?
Yeah, that would be a good new system that we need to evaluate. We have only by accident sometimes in the open canopy forest it can happen, but then it's more an accident than not. Yeah. No, but yeah, I'm open for any ideas.
For any occasion. Thank you very much, Pascal.